we're going to want to drop these into our game screen. So from the library, I'll select that, scroll over so I can see what I'm doing, give myself a 50% zoom so I can see the screen, and drop the game board on there, like so. That's a little bit big, so let's actually open up the game board, select everything, use the free transform tool, and just shrink that up a little bit. That should be fine. Hopefully that's still square. If we look down in the corner, we can see that it's not really square. Let's just make it 340 by 340. And just for good measure, let's make sure that the registration point is at 0 and 0, just in case. Alright, now if we go back to the game screen, we should see that the game board we have dropped in there has been changed by the editing we did in the game screen movie clip, game board movie clip. Alright, that looks fine. Let's go back to the main timeline, and we're going to want to bring that game screen in. We'll have that come in at 50 right there. Select the appropriate keyframe. Drop the game screen right on there, and select tool, select the game screen, and put it at 0 by 0. Makes life handy. And we can see again, because our memory text is so huge, it winds up making a bigger blue bounding box. But because our registration point's always 0, 0, that doesn't really matter. Now we're also going to want this to be nicely animated, 24 frames a second. I've made a mistake earlier when I was talking about the OK button, saying that our animations would take something like 15 seconds. Of course I meant 15 frames. Let's make this one, another 20 frames, so we'll go from 50 to 70. Add another keyframe there, insert keyframe. And we'll have this one also slide in, but let's have it slide in from above. So at the beginning of the animation, which is 50, we'll just grab it and slide it upwards. So make sure it's right off. And you'll notice here, zoom in a little bit, that my corner right here is not lined up. So if we have that selected and just move its Y position, move its X position back to 0, it'll line those corners up. We want the Y position to be a big negative number because that means it's above the play screen. We also want to make sure that our big underline that comes out of our memory text thing there isn't overlapping the stage, which it isn't now. That's fine. But at 70, it'll be sunk down onto the actual play area. So let's just right click in there and make it a motion tween, so that'll slide down. That looks fine. Zoom back out to 50 so I can see what I'm doing. And now let's make sure that our script that we have up here on the code layer is properly lined up with the changes that we've made. What we want is our play button to take us here to frame 50 where the play screen starts. We want our help button to take us to frame 10 where our help screen starts, and our OK button to come into existence here at frame 30 where the help screen stops moving. That should be fine. I mean, that's sitting on 30 right now. If I open the window and the Actions tab, we see OK button goes back to and plays 1. That's fine. If we go back to frame 1 and open the Actions tab, we see the help button, F help click goes to 10, which is where we want. F play click goes to 50, which is also where we want. But as we can see here, at 50, we have our buttons and our start screen invisible. Let's make them visible again. And while the animation's playing, they don't exist anymore. So let's just go back down and stretch them out to 70 as well. We can just grab that keyframe and drag it right over to 70. That'll be fine. This one, I can grab that sort of ending frame. It's not a keyframe, but it's an endpoint frame, so it gets itself a little box. I'll just drag it over as well. and it makes a keyframe when it gets there. That's hunky-dory, I think. We'll do the same trick we did before with the buttons and just have a look on our stage. When does the game board cover up the buttons? And it's about that frame there, which is really just before they end. So I'll just drag this keyframe back by one frame and get rid of that unnecessary button frame there, so the buttons will not be working while the memory screen is down. Let's have a test of this and see if we've made any horrible miscalculations with any of our timelines or scripting so far. So help button goes to the help screen, that animates fine. OK button, our OK animation doesn't run. We'll look at that in a second. Our OK rollout animation doesn't run. The play takes us to the play screen, but when it gets down, it doesn't stop. So it rolls in, but doesn't stop. Alright, the first one is fixed easily enough by just throwing a keyframe in the code layer, insert keyframe at 70, go to the actions frame, and give it a good old stop. And what we can do here, the OK button, if I click on frame 30 where the OK button comes into existence and look at the actions frame, the OK button's function is to go to and play 1, which takes it back to the beginning instead of rolling the rollout animation. So let's change that to just play right from where it is, and play should be a lowercase p. You'll notice when it turns blue, it's a good keyword that the scripting tool recognizes. If it stays black, then it isn't a specific, let's call it a protected word that the scripter recognizes. You'll learn more about that later, but it's good for seeing when you've made typos in things that ought to be functions. So now when we hit the OK button, instead of jumping back to the beginning like it was doing, it will actually play this rollout. And what we want to happen is when it gets to here and it's done rolling out, we'll just add another keyframe in the code layer, go to the actions there, and tell it to go to and stop at frame 1. So then what should happen is we press the help button, our roll in runs, our OK button gets its code and it stops there. We press the OK button and the play resumes, and then when you hit this point in the timeline will jump back to 1 and stop. Let's test that, have a look at how it looks. Help rolls in, OK rolls out, and we're back at the first screen. Everything looks peachy, and now play stops when it gets there. That's great. We'll do the same thing with the play as a rollout animation. But let's do something a little bit more interesting with our play screen here. Well, no, let's do something more interesting with the game board when we get to finishing that up. We'll make the roll out animation for the game screen also 15 seconds, so out to 85, insert a keyframe, and let's have it roll back off to the left just like the help screen does. Select button, select it, and just move it to the left. If you see it jumps up like it did there, go down to your number box and bring it back to 0 so that it moves straight to the left. You can of course drag it a bit. Don't double click on it or you'll go inside of the movie clips themselves, and just drag it so that all the parts of it are off the stage. That's fine, and we'll just make that a motion tween. Great. And since we don't have anything to do at the game screen right now, viz coding, that's going to be your second assignment, we'll just put an OK button there as well, which will tell it to play that animation and do the same trick that we just did with the help screen.